Two and two were four. Two and two were five. Two and two were four. Two and two were five. You don't exist. I don't exist. We are the dead. Two and two were four. Two and two were five. Two and two were four. Two and two were five. You don't exist. I don't exist. We are the dead. War is peace. Ignorance is strength. Freedom is slavery. War is peace. Ignorance is strength. Freedom is slavery. War is peace. Ignorance is strength. Freedom is slavery. War is peace.
Greetings, science fiction and fantasy enthusiasts. Do you read books? Do you watch films? Do you hate deodorant? Then welcome to our podcast. With Ryan Sean O'Reilly, David Wilkinson, and Richard Mell. You're listening to No Deodorant in Outer Space. Now, let's get started.
It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. Winston Smith, his chin nuzzled into his breast in an effort to escape the vile wind, slipped quickly through the glass doors of Victory Mansions, though not quickly enough to prevent a swirl of gritty dust from entering along with him. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to another bleak edition of No Deodorant in Outer Space. My name is Ryan Sean O'Reilly. I'm hailing all the way back to you, loyal listener, from the Ministry of Love. And joining me, as per usual, a common Eurasian spy, Richard Mell.
Yes, brother. It's a pleasure to be here tonight.
Along with him, I wish you guys could see the visual of Wilk holding his head, is the most notorious thought criminal from East Asia, Detroit, David Wilkinson!
It's actually David Sean Wilkinson, but thank you, yes.
Okay, and as another special treat, joining us this episode all the way from Oceania, straight from the traitor Goldstein's mouth, John Doyle, a.k.a. Dole, a.k.a. Dolebot, or Dolebotics.
Hello, everyone.
Dole, welcome back.
Thanks. It's good to be back.
Yeah. It was, now, if people should be aware that Dole is
it's unbad to be back.
It's double plus good that you're here.
It's double plus good.
Dole is the composer and writer of our theme song. He also did the videography in our video special on Kurt Vonnegut, and he also participated in a previous episode when we covered Something Wicked This Way Comes. He's also a musician.
A great musician.
Artist. Yeah.
Oh, hey. Sorry. Go on.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I just
want
want to, for people that are listening for the first time, I just want to point out that we're not virgins. I know that intro could throw you off, but go on. We've all enjoyed Congress with Women.
Any other updates from you, Will?
Nope. Just keeping you posted. Now, we were getting back to our podcast about 1984. Yes.
And that song you heard earlier was performed by Dole. The melody and music were written by Dole, John Doyle. And the lyrics, of course, come from 1984, written by George Orwell. And Dole obviously wrote that song inspired by this book. So, I mean, Dole's joined us before, and he's a very special guest for our show. But anyone who's listened to us for the first time, Dole, do you want to just tell us a couple words about yourself, just to introduce you to people?
Yeah, sure.
Your relationship to science fiction and fantasy.
Yeah. Well, I love sci-fi. I'm not as much of an avid reader as yourselves, but I do like the occasional sci-fi book, especially Stephen King. I'm actually reading his new Dark Tower book. It's fairly new. Wind Through the Keyhole. I recommend it. It's pretty good so far. But I also like 1984. I'm looking forward to talking about this one. But other than that, about me, I'm in this band called I Decline. And we are currently producing a record that is, very deeply enriched with sci-fi origins. We listen to a lot of Hawkwind, Monster Magnet, a lot of sci-fi references in that music. And we have this epic record we've been working on for 10 years now. We finally got the gall to say we could put it out, and it's called The Galaxies, and we're going to be premiering it live at Reggie's.
Yeah, that will have already happened by the time this comes out.
Yeah. So we're doing that.
So that's great. That's you guys. I mean, and I think a lot of metal music is inspired from science fiction and fantasy and horror tropes. So you're certainly no stranger to that. But I think that kind of refamiliarizes you with the crowd here. So just to, as you mentioned, what we're going to be covering this episode is the book 1984, written, of course, by George Orwell. And then there's actually, I think, 2 film editions we're going to talk about. One directed by Michael Radford, which starred John Hurt, and then another one directed by Michael Anderson and starred Edward O'Brien. And then as a little bonus, I think at the end we'll talk about a play version that some of us saw locally at the Steppenwolf Theater here that just happened to coincide with our podcast, because here at No Deodorant in Outer Space, we focus on being relevant and anticipating all the latest cultural movements by reading books from the 1940s that are turning into local plays. So
and we're live. We do this. This is all happening right now as you listen to it. This is anything can happen. This is live.
This is a live recording. Look out. So of course we're talking that. So why don't we just go around as we normally do and give our opening comments to set up the show, and then we can kind of get into our discourse here. Wilk, you're always good for putting on the spot. What do you got for us tonight for your opening comment?
Yeah, I think this is one of the best written books in the last 100 years, and it's captured the imaginations of millions of people since it's been published. But I also think it's one of the most misinterpreted books as well.
All right. Rick, let's go to you. Opening comment.
Reading his book for the first time, for me, it was a page turner. I just sort of poured through this book, and it really grabbed me. It was the first exposure I had to that other side, that, kind of questioning constantly, and it really kind of opened my eyes a bit. So
okay, all right, Dole, any opening comment for the night? Any short, one sentence comment?
Sure. It's hard to tie it down in one sentence, but I guess what I can say about this book is it transcends just being a sci-fi or work of fiction. I think it really reaches out to sociological stretches of the imagination. It's much more politically charged type of book than some of the other books you guys have talked about. So,
all right, very good. Yeah. And my comment is, age is like a fine wine with a dark, full-bodied harbinger of doom, increasing with relevance as each year goes by. All right. That wraps up our opening comments. The book, of course, was written by George Orwell, or was it? Let's get right into the bio. And Rick, why don't you fill us in on this very well-renowned, well-respected author?
Yeah, well, George Orwell was his pen name, and his real name was Eric Arthur Blair.
Dun, dun, dun.
Right. Apparently his work was so kind of radical that he had to invent his pen name so that he wouldn't have to worry about anything. It's odd that, he did have to kind of make that maneuver. I don't know if it had anything to do with his paranoid ideology, but I mean, it's just a lot of it came true. Of course,
good. That's a good question, because I know I think a lot of authors, or not a lot, but some authors will adopt a pen name for their first book in case it's not a success. And if it's not a success, then they can drop it and use their real name or a different one. And I think that might have actually been the case here. But I mean, definitely Orwell has a lot of stuff going on. So I just wanted to throw that in.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot written about Orwell. Unfortunately, I hadn't gotten a lot of time to absorb it, and I don't really have much to say about him.
Dole, do you have anything to comment about that?
That's kind of lazy.
It's fucking pathetic. I know. I know it is.
You know,
it is.
I know just from some of the things that I looked at regarding Orwell, I know he was very sick at the time that he wrote this book. I think he was riddled with, was it tuberculosis? Was it?
Yeah, tuberculosis, which I think didn't one or both of his wives die of that, or what? No,
I think his wife died
his
through
first
complications of his after the pregnancy. I thought, wasn't it?
Oh, okay.
I thought that was the case, that they had her child, and I think she died. Or no, I might be misremembering that, but I know that she died, and he was stuck with just his child. And
was
then
adopted? Wasn't his child adopted? I think.
I don't know. That's getting too far beyond my knowledge, but I know he was riddled with disease, the tuberculosis, and I think that a lot of the book, like his Winston's character, reflects his illness, him coughing, this ulcer on his ankle. Some of that stuff I think comes from maybe some of the symptoms that he was experiencing.
Another point about the tuberculosis is this was at the end of his life. Like you said, it took him 3 years to write this book, I think, and he moved away to a Scottish isle, the Isle of Jura, which I guess is not an easy place to live. It's like, I think might be kind of mountainous and windswept place.
I think
he really isolated himself.
He isolated himself on purpose, from what I understand. I think kind of related to 1984. He wanted to be away from phones, TV, the traffic, and all the noise of London. He wanted to get away from all that because he felt like it was an invasion of privacy. So that's why he went to this place that was very remote. And, he wanted his privacy. He valued that privacy. So I think that's very much a part of where 1984 comes from.
Going to a remote island, people do that, right? I mean, is that really about privacy or just the joy of being on a beautiful island outside of a city?
Well, you think he went there to live
Well,
there?
this wasn't...
I'm just asking. I didn't get that he wasn't a recluse. Did he actually feel like his privacy was being invaded?
Well, at the end. Well, this is at the end of his life, okay? This is in the last 3 years of his life or whatever.
And when he was writing the book, too.
Right, why he was writing the book. So he didn't spend his whole life like this. So I don't know if he was a recluse or maybe he became more reclusive at the end. And this isn't like a paradise
but again,
island.
The whole need for privacy thing, I mean, there's any number of ways he could do that. Maybe, where are we getting that from, that he wanted to go there for privacy? I'm just saying, I've never heard that.
Because of the island. But it was a remote island.
But you're tying in themes of the novel to his need to go to the I'm just saying, I don't think that's true.
Well, I know that I've heard some interviews with him where I watched a couple interviews with him where he very much felt like the private life was a valued commodity that was being lost.
But everyone feels kind of like that. I mean, that's not that unique of a thought.
No, I don't think everyone feels like that. That's a pretty blanket statement.
It is a pretty blanket statement. People like private lives. Yeah, I'll say most people like that idea, because most people that don't have private lives complain that they don't have private lives, and almost everyone.
But there's people who say they want a private life and then they go move into the city, and there's people who say they want a private life and they go move into the country.
How many people kill themselves in the city every year because they're lonely? If you have a private life in Manhattan, you have a private life on an island. I mean, that's the joy of the world we live in right now.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, that you can be lonely in a city as well.
I'm saying, I think we're extrapolating themes from the novel that aren't actually there. Here's an old man that wants to live in an island in Scotland. Who wouldn't want to do that? It's not because he was paranoid about people spying on him. He just wanted to end his life on a nice island.
Well, that's not what I was saying either. I think I was saying that that reflects part of who he was and what the book comes from.
Yeah.
Obviously he was sick. He didn't have I don't know if he had an ulcer on his leg and was like, drinking gin and sleeping on a concrete floor. But, I think that stuff is like, it comes from somewhere, right? It came from something he was experiencing.
But I feel like a whole segment of our population has deified this book and this author in a way he's been deified to the point that people it goes on and on. People think this book is a prophecy. People think it's a Bible. It's just a well-written book about modern times that he's living in. It's about human nature. It's not about anything else. And
okay, well, all right. So you guys are disagreeing about his motivations for living on the island. I understand that, but we can leave that where that's at, because this all goes into the rest of him. And I just want to, say a few other things going on with his life. Rick, do you have anything else to add about his life, or you pretty much dropped the ball across the board?
Almost. He did travel quite a bit. He was in Burma, and when he was there, he was ironically in the Imperial Police.
Yeah, which I think
Burma.
is relevant.
And, he also went to go fight fascism in Spain, where he got shot in the throat.
Stop at the police
and,
thing, because he was in the
Jesus.
police. Okay, I think he was actually in India.
Oh my God.
And when he was in the police, he actually resigned his position.
I wonder what Rick was saying.
And then he went and became a writer after.
What was
that.
Rick saying?
No, he just kind of blew past that. I wanted to point that out. That I think that was significant, that he whatever his experience was with the police, he thought it was enough that he resigned from it and started. It drove him into writing from that point.
What happened
forward.
with his throat, though, Rick?
That was when he went to the Spanish War. If you want to expand on that, or Spanish Civil War.
Hey, Ryan and everybody else, what you were talking about, both the Imperial Police thing and the war. I remember reading somewhere that he got disillusioned with, the Socialist Party. When did that happen? Because I think that's a significant thing.
I think that happened when he was in the Spanish Civil War.
And what's the significance of him being part of the Socialist Party? I mean, that's
no. Not that he was a part of it. That he became disillusioned with it, and that was the impetus for him writing 1984.
Well, I know when he went to the Spanish Civil War. Okay,
and he even went on record to say that he was dissatisfied with the Socialist Party, and that was why he.
As it was currently.
Exactly.
But ideologically, he is a democratic
he
socialist.
did he liked ideologically, he liked it, but he was dissatisfied, and that's what I was wondering about. Do you know that?
I know when he went down to Spain and he fought in the Civil War. Okay, I think he went down there with his wife.
Right. What Dole was asking, what ticked him off about the current socialism going on in England at that time? I don't know. Do you know, Ryan?
No,
I mean, you do tend to absorb everything, right?
I know.
I mean,
Wilk, you know about this?
You want to cover everything.
Orwell's more of a
go ahead.
is kind of referenced quite a bit by libertarians and by right-wing people for his book Animal Farm and for 1984. He speaks to individual freedoms, and he felt that they were being eroded at the time, and they were. Individual freedoms have always been eroded, and I think at a certain point we reach a dissatisfaction with our state of government and political parties. If you're intelligent enough, anyone's going to do that. He died at 46. He grew up in an era where people were being drafted and there was world wars and people were caught up in nationalism because they were being bombed. And later in life, he became very disillusioned with that propaganda that he'd been exposed to. True propaganda, not the nonsense we see today, but propaganda that we only read about in books where they're literally putting up posters and encouraging you to go die. And if you don't die in the war voluntarily, they're going to draft you. And that was his background. So I think it was a natural evolution.
He was a part of it for a while too.
Yeah, and again, but
he got brought into the war movement, was writing this stuff, and I think then he quit it. Right?
He was a journalist. He was more known for journalism than his writing at first. I mean, he was on the field. He's a very Ernest Hemingway type in that sense, where he was out there fighting, writing, fucking, I assume, but he was living life. But he was caught up in a nationalistic fever for a long point, and at some point, like everyone else, he realized, well, this is bullshit. I'm helping this douchebag get elected, and he's just a douchebag. And I think the book he wrote was a critique of, again, government and human nature, which I think can be universally applied to Plato said government's necessary evil, and he just expanded upon that. But that's what I get from him, and he died very young too, at 46. I mean,
46.
Yeah. And this book was published like a year, I think, before he died. So
Did anybody read Animal Farm?
Yes.
Any chance?
Yeah.
In there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, we've all read it.
I've never read it. I'm just.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
I have not. No, I've seen the movie, but I have not read it.
He wrote that about his experiences in the Spanish Civil War, dealing with. I think when he went down to the Spanish Civil War, he went down there as a journalist, but he participated in the fighting, and like Rick said, he got shot in the throat. And I think he kind of had an ideal out. He was kind of idealist when he went down there,
But Wilk asked the question: why did he get shot in the throat?
I didn't know about that.
I don't know why the fuck he got shot in the throat. He was in the war. He just got shot in the throat.
He was taller than his fellow Spaniards, and they were in the trenches.
Okay. I didn't know that.
So Rick did do some research.
But I think when he went down there, he found out the situation was more complicated than he originally thought, because the parties down there that he was supporting became very fractured, and Stalin was supporting some factions of the parties down there, and ultimately wouldn't support the revolution fully at that point. And I think that might have made him become more cynical later. But I know when he left and after he got shot, he kind of got out in the nick of time, because things were just getting worse and worse.
I thought something interesting. I was watching this documentary. Actually, you pointed it out to me, Ryan. I watched it earlier today, but they were talking about when he wrote Animal Farm, his wife was still alive, and she had a huge influence on the writing for that. But after that, she passed away, and then he wrote 1984. And 1984 is very dark and dismal.
And the Animal Farm has a way different tone. I mean, it's not.
Yeah, that's why I asked about it, because I never read it and just was curious.
Animal Farm
It's a
has a
too.
thread of hope, I'd say. I mean, well, this book is
As
very.
opposed to
Again,
this book.
it's not a fun book, but it's a really well written book. I mean, he creates this true dystopia world. I mean, it's not like sliding into dystopia. It's just miserable from start to finish. I mean, it's a brutal read by a man. Yeah.
Dole, did you read or did you see in the video that at some point Orwell went tramping?
Tramping?
He actually went and like lived dressed up as like a tramp, like a homeless person, and just tried to live on the streets to try to get more of an experience with
What a
like
fucking
life and
loser.
stuff. I don't know if you guys saw that. Yeah.
I wonder if he had any sex with prostitutes like Winston did.
God.
Jesus.
Sorry. I said, what a fucking loser. That's pathetic. I know. I went to high school with this guy who once said, "Hey, tonight we're going to sleep in my parents' backyard." It was December, so we can experience what it's like to be homeless. And I said, "Phil, that's fucking nuts." And I played Contra at home. I'm just saying,
And look at the
Yeah,
person you turned
seriously.
out to be. Very empathetic.
Yeah, well, go outside. Yeah, we all know what it's like to be cold. I mean, here's what it's like to be homeless. You're mentally ill. Sorry.
Phil had a life-changing event which completely revamped his life, and you got a high score in Contra. It all worked out.
No, Phil just wanted to feel important, special.
All right. Does anyone else have anything to say about Orwell, his jumbled up biography we've gone through here?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I've got nothing else.
Okay.
I should have been more read up. But,
You dropped the
I
ball.
didn't.
So
I did.
why don't we get into the book now, which we kind of already started. Wilk, why don't you give us a quick, summary of the book? The main character is Winston Smith, and you can go ahead and, kind of give us a quick synopsis of the plot.
Okay. Well, an overview, I mean, we've used the word dystopia, but 1984 has kind of set the tone for so many dark dystopian novels, movies, films, and soundtracks since it was published in 1949. Winston Smith works for the party, which is based in Britain or London, and it's basically showcasing propaganda, deception, and really my favorite part about the book was the language and the words they described and how they use them throughout, and they show the constant manipulation, a constant attention to individuals by the state, and it created a strong sense of justifiable paranoia, which ends in a horrific torture sequence where Winston is trying to flee the party, but at the same time is being manipulated by the party to flee the party, to expose him as a traitor, and it's a brilliant book. Again, not a happy book. Is that too much? Too little?
That's certainly something. One of the biggest concepts in this book, we want to get right into it, is Big Brother. The term Big Brother was invented by George Orwell. And now we have shows, and now we have cell phones with cameras that watch us. Big Brother in this book is embodied by this, I guess, picture of this individual who represents the party in control. I don't know if you get into this. The world is divided up into 3 superpowers, and Winston's living in Oceania, and he's in like London. So Oceania includes like England and Americas and all the Americas and stuff. And Big Brother is supposed to be the leader. We never see Big Brother. I don't know. Do we even hear Big Brother say anything? We just see his picture. And then there's cameras everywhere, 2-way cameras or 2-way screens where people can see. Yes, people can see things, and then people are also being watched constantly or audio recorded. And so that's the concept of Big Brother, which I think living in the modern world, everyone knows that concept, even if we don't attribute it to this book. Obviously that is very prescient, very far-reaching. I mean, Dole, you're a known paranoia person. How did you feel about the big concept of Big Brother in reading of this book?
I won't go so far as to say we've reached the level of insanity in this book where people are controlling our thoughts and stuff. I think it's a bit extreme. I think that some of this book is a little bit way out there and more serves as a warning than this could really happen. But as far as like now, I mean, nobody has any privacy anymore. I mean, with Facebook, Facebook and any sort of social media, it's out the window now. Everybody wants to share everything. And one of the things that they say in this book is, we're in exchange for us taking away your privacy and us taking away your freedom, we're giving you, all these benefits. But in this book, there really isn't any benefits. Where in life and real life.
So, Will,
Yeah, I want to address
freedom is-
that when you get a
go
chance.
ahead, Will. Go ahead.
Well, I mean,
go ahead.
I don't have much privacy. It's like saying if you take a gun and you put it against your head and pull the trigger, that you're a victim of gun violence. We don't have privacy because we choose to forsake our privacy
by going on. I wasn't going to say it.
No, you're fine. I'm just saying, but the thing about Orwell is he was talking about an invasion of privacy, whereas we've really turned the cameras on ourselves. We're voluntarily giving up our privacy every time we text on a cell phone. I mean, these are companies that make a profit off our information. Every email we send, everything on social media, this conversation over Skype is not private. And I know that. So, and there's really not, I mean, we're voluntarily relinquishing our privacy in a way that he didn't even imagine in 1984. We're giving it up. We're privacy sluts.
Sure.
Dole, go ahead.
Yeah, and that's what I was kind of getting at was that, on one hand, we've given up that privacy. We are, Big Brother is watching us, but by our own admission, we're allowing that to happen.
We are Big Brother.
Yeah, we are Big Brother, exactly. But the difference being in the book that it's like Wilk said, it's forced. It's almost like a forced labor force. And then the interesting thing, and neither of you guys really mentioned this, but you've got this caste system. You've got the inner party, the outer party, and then the proles. And up the top is Big Brother. But so the proles are just like, normal people that just go and work their 9-to-5 job and it's nothing special. And then they go to the bar and have their nightcap or whatever, but they're given more freedom than anybody.
And I think they got the impression that they're not watched.
No, they're not really watched. They're not really watched. Although, if somebody in the proliterate becomes a little bit more radical or is doing odd things or displaying this odd behavior, then that person disappears, just like in the outer party. But then you've got that outer party where Winston is. Winston is a part of that outer party. He's not in the inner circle. So his freedom is all pretty much gone. He has no freedom. But then I guess his only benefit is that he gets to drink gin. That's the only thing I got out of it.
Crappy victory gin. Rick, one of the ways that this is all happens is that there is thought police. There is like this kind of clandestine arm of the government who is constantly. They're the ones behind the screens. They're out in the streets, hiding and ready to pounce out and catch you doing something wrong. Did this tie into your natural paranoia, being the resident conspiracist of our group here?
Well, the thought police, I guess through our relinquishment of everything that we do, our texts, every profit-making piece of communication that we send, including the conversation we're having right now, that exists. You can translate audio into text, and then you can have text go to an algorithm that will kind of parse it up, do a word search, find any key terms. It's all out there. It's all databased, and it's happening today, full speed ahead. And that's what's going on. And I feel restricted. I certainly feel restricted because of that.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think like in the last 5 years since the dawn of Facebook, really, I feel like my behavior in social, just on the computer alone, has completely changed. Like I don't feel like the dream of the internet way back when of total anarchy is there anymore. I feel like it's becoming more and more restricted and more unsafe. Like anything you say, political correctness is like completely out of control now, because anything you say is considered offensive. It's insane. And that's because it's all a result of this. Everyone wants to, washed clean. Everything has to be absolutely perfect. You can review and everything that you type. It's just insane.
Are we also not? Are we Big Brother, and are we also the thought police? Because we have the mob mentality.
We have you here, Ryan. We have you here, Ryan. You're the Big Brother of the show. And I lost my other thought, but that first statement was true.
What I was getting at is like now on the internet, if someone does something that people don't like, there's now like this mob mentality from the internet where people will go and cyberstalk people and kind of infiltrate their lives and harass people into new levels now. Although in some ways I think that concept is not even new, because if you go back to the Salem witch trials or McCarthyism, that stuff has always existed. And
You know what's also kind of scary, Ryan? And I don't know if I'm sure you guys would probably feel the same too. The scarier thing to me is not so much the person that gets, that says something off base and then gets attacked. It's more that the general public stops saying anything because they're afraid of what anyone will think. That's scary. That's really scary to me. Like, if I say something, it might offend somebody,
Okay, but you realize the opposite of that is happening.
Mm-hmm.
This is all perceived. Right. And I mean, people say whatever the hell they want. People pretend to get offended, but people are saying more outrageous stuff right now than they ever have before. Freedom of speech is at an all-time high. I mean, there really aren't any consequences for saying things. And if you don't believe me,
I disagree that there's no consequences.
Okay, fine. There's not the consequences that you're talking about. People can say they want without losing their career or livelihood. The leading candidate for the Republicans is named Donald Trump right now. It is December 8th, 2015. He has said a variety of things that would be offensive and shocking on every level to almost any political thing, and he is leading the field. He's got almost half the country galvanized behind him, ready to elect him to the next president. You can't tell me that we people like to complain about.
But don't you think that's like in direct contrast, like people responding to his extreme rhetoric because they're like, "Wow, he had the balls to say that." Like, I would never say that. They're like, yeah. I think that's what's happening. People are like so afraid to say anything, even if it's not even that offensive. So then this guy comes out of left field and starts saying or right field, actually. He comes out of right field and starts saying all this insane stuff. And people are like, wow.
It's literally a pattern. It's literally a pattern you can trace back as long as recorded history. People don't say something, then somebody comes along and says something that blows their minds. People follow that person. It's nothing new. It's a cycle. It's a pattern. I mean, nothing.
It's a pendulum. It swings back and forth.
It's more like a record. It's more like a record. More like a record that goes around.
There's been so much political correctness. He's coming by after 15 years of people kind of going almost silent on just sort of like racial innuendos and stuff like that. Here you have this sort of almost fresh take, but it's really like a take from the 1980s and 1980s humor and stuff like that. That's been just resurrected, and it sounds so fresh today because it's all contemporary. This guy's running for president.
The guy will say anything because that's his memo. He's like, I'm just going to say anything. I don't care who it offends because it works. Because nobody else will do it.
Okay, well, moving on from Donald Trump, we don't have to make the podcast about him. But another quote from the book that I thought was very poignant was, "He who controls the past controls the future. He who controls the present controls the past." And one of the things that happens in this book, and Winston's job in this book, I don't know if we covered this, is he literally sits at a cubicle or something and is giving like old articles. And so what happens is Big Brother will make pronouncements for the party and predictions for the future. And if he's wrong, one of Winston's job and other people's jobs is go back in all the articles and see what Big Brother said in the past and change what he said in the past so there's no record of him being incorrect. They're literally rewriting history. And Orwell drew on this inspiration for, I guess Stalin was up to some of this stuff when he was in power. And he drew inspiration from that. Rick.
Yes.
Any thoughts on that? On this controlling the history, or trying to control the history by eradicating anything that doesn't go to what the party wants.
That was one of the central elements of INGSOC was that one of the essential elements was that they had to do this in order to control thought. Everything that you read is basically sort of constructed to fulfill a better view of INGSOC, and I don't know why INGSOC goes to the trouble of making predictions on the quantities of grain that will be shipped, but they go ahead and if they're wrong, they'll revise it to something even more and something.
Isn't that part of their method of control? Isn't that part of their method
of
control?
It is. Everything's always on the up and up, and that is such a sort of rigorous and painstaking way to do that. And I think that has translated into today, and today it's basically the 24-hour news cycle and just sort of getting handpicked, edited information through to the people and then just sort of going on to the next subject. And it's all handpicked. And it's sort of it's there to basically erase everybody's memory. Okay. You're not supposed to remember anything these days. And that's the device they use today.
But I think Wilk might have a counter to that in the same sense that you're saying things are edited and stuff. There's also, because of the internet and proliferation of TV and opening markets, there's a lot more being said.
Yeah, the internet, and available. The internet is sort of almost like the savior, and it's like the exception to that. If everybody watched television these days, it would be completely helpless. And you wouldn't get a worldview at all. You would be completely brainwashed. Really,
I think 1984
Well,
creates this victim mentality that people want to embrace, and they do. People, it's almost more comforting to believe that in the shadows there's order, that the government is out to get you and can dedicate the resources to send black helicopters after you and send government workers to monitor you. But the sad fact is no one is that interested in you. The government is disorganized. I've worked in government. Dole's worked in government. I've worked in the White House. I've worked in the federal and the state government. They don't know what's going on. They don't care about you. They're just trying to keep their little life going forward here, as we all are. I think a better dystopian novel, one that's often compared to, that was written earlier, was Brave New World, where Huxley kind of referenced a society where people were placated by distractions and drugs and things like that, which I think is really what's happening right now. And you have the whole, religion being the opiate of the masses. I think Marx said that. Really, I think what Rick was saying or Dole was saying is that TV has become an opiate. Entertainment's become an opiate. But I don't think there's any oppression that's coming from the government. I think we oppress ourselves, we delude ourselves. And 1984 kind of skips that and tells a fantastic story about a government where they can actually devote the resources to follow one person around. I mean, look at all the people that are dedicated to following Winston around, a guy that's basically a middle-class gin drinker. There's like, every party official is like, we know everything about you. It's like the Jason Bourne. It's basically like every Matt Damon movie. Matt Damon always plays some guy that's incredibly fascinating as a male fantasy. I mean, Jason Bourne, I'm a secret agent. The Good Will Hunting, I'm a secret genius. And The Martian, I'm a secret survivalist. I mean, 1984 caters to that part of our ego that we want to feel important and watched, when in reality we're not. And that's why it's a great book, but to me it's just not realistic. I don't think it's
Dole.
Yeah, that's what I was going to add at the very start when you first asked for our summaries, was that, I feel like it's a very dark story, but a lot of the things that happen would never happen, like exactly what Wilk pointed out. I mean, it's highly unlikely that people would dedicate those kind of resources after one person. The only country I think in the world that's even remotely close to that right now would be North Korea. And even North Korea, I mean, they can't watch every single person all the time, and it's a very small country. It's not the size of what Oceania is proposed to have been. There's all of the Americas and Great Britain. I mean, it would just be insane for them to be able to do such a thing. And then the whole concept of controlling one's thoughts, and that whole premise in the book, while it's a great tool, when they say, "Oh, we're going to wash your brain clean and put ourselves in it," it's great writing, but it's not realistic. I mean, you can't control someone's thoughts. Even after torture, someone's going to have their own thoughts about, I mean, I just don't see it happening.
Well, but I think that you can mentally abuse someone to the point where you warp their maybe you can mentally abuse people to warp their thoughts. I mean, we have examples of that. People have been kidnapped and, lived with just vile human beings who've tortured them. And I mean, they can come out of that, but at least temporarily, you can mentally abuse people.
Oh yeah. Don't get me wrong there. I'm just saying that person is no longer thinks for themselves. That's not realistic. That's what I've.
Well, I guess it depends on what degree you want to go at it, but that's fine. So in that same line of thought, the character of O'Brien, who is an inter-party member who the protagonist Winston Smith befriends, and he thinks that O'Brien is actually a traitor to Big Brother and going to is part of this underground organization that's working to make things better, betrays him, and ultimately becomes his torturer at the end. And there's also a shopkeeper, Sherrington, who offers Winston and his girlfriend a place of solace to hide out and have peace and isolation, supposedly from Big Brother. And he also ultimately turns them in as a member of the Thought Police. Did you guys feel that those characters were flat? Rick, what about you? Did you feel that those characters were flat and it just was also not realistic?
I mean, yeah, what's his name? O'Brien. He was flat on purpose. I mean, that was his thing. He was in the inner party, and they all have to be that way. I would suppose. First of all, they would have to lead by example, right? So, and O'Brien was a smarter gentleman. In INGSOC, they test people whether they should be in the party or not, or whether they should be in the inner party or not. People up there in the inner party, and likewise with people in our government. I mean, they all went to East Coast schools. I mean, they've had more sophisticated upbringings, and they're in touch with Europe more than we are. It's just, that's kind of like how our society runs too. Anyway, I think O'Brien was basically just doing his role. He was kind of scary. He was disarming at the same time. He knew absolutely everything about Winston. He was tracking him for several years before this whole thing went down, this episode.
Which goes back to you guys were talking earlier about how can a government spend that much amount of resources on an individual?
I didn't buy the whole 7 years thing that he was watching. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think he started watching him until basically he went into the store and bought the diary. I think that was the first start of when they...
But look...
Well, he could have...
Guys,
so you think O'Brien was lying?
Yes.
He's just saying... He just said he was watching him.
But you guys, the same thing is happening right now with these databases. I mean, they're compiling everything about everybody, and they know your thoughts. They have a dossier on absolutely everyone, or they could generate one right now.
But they have to have a flag saying, we need to watch this person. I mean, that's the thing. That's the key point of what I'm saying is, yeah, they may have been watching Winston for 7 years, but nothing mattered. They're not going to suddenly do something because he put a speck of white dust on a diary. I mean, he's going to do something because they really think he's a threat to the party. Once they realized that, then they were after him,
And O'Brien is really the chief antagonist in this story. I mean, Big Brother, we don't see Big Brother. Big Brother does nothing. It's really all O'Brien that's behind it.
Yeah, more or less. Also, that guy,
and I
shopkeeper too, a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he just does his one act of turning them over.
But what about Julia? You guys don't even talk about Julia.
Death.
Well,
I thought she had some death because she had sort of like this whimsical spirit about her, like she just didn't give a shit, that gave her some complexity. Basically, she was just kind of out to have a bit of fun, but it was kind of like the system that drove her to do that almost, from what I kind of read out of it. It was, she was just sort of like battling her anger and her suppression with her being in the party by doing all of this.
I agree with you. I think she did have a lot of depth.
Release. Yeah.
Yeah, she had a lot of that. She was a very interesting character, and for being such an older book, I was like, she has a lot of agency because she was more than just like whimsical. She was like kind of like a tough person.
Yeah.
And she was a survivor, more so than Winston.
She was smarter than Winston.
He's the one who kind of
smarter than Winston.
Yeah, she
was.
Winston's the one I think that kind of ended up getting them in trouble, not her.
He was a complete idiot about everything. Yeah.
Like she even says she doesn't want it. She doesn't want to join the Brotherhood. She doesn't care really. She doesn't really care about revolting against the party other than having sex and drinking coffee and things like that. She doesn't really care about.
And Winston was stupid when he got into that room. He didn't even check behind the tapestry and see if there was anything behind it. I mean, holy shit.
But
he was an idiot.
And I don't think she's completely apathetic. Like she's not a flat character. She puts some thoughts in what she does, and she develops a relationship with him, like that is like a full relationship. That has a lot of different.
Yeah,
dimensions.
didn't you guys think it was interesting that she doesn't like? She even points out to him like she doesn't believe that the Brotherhood exists. She thinks it's invented by the party.
Yeah,
like the.
Well, Emmanuel Goldstein is kind of presented the same way that Big Brother is. Emmanuel Goldstein's the leader of the Brotherhood, but we never actually
the opposition to the party.
Right, but he's kind of featured prominently in propaganda just as the enemy, kind of a. I view him as propaganda. Yeah, I mean that's just my.
But the Brotherhood is tied in with Goldstein because when he thinks he's part of the Brotherhood, they give him a book about everything that Goldstein wrote, and he wrote about.
But then O'Brien said he wrote that book.
War is Peace. He wrote about all those concepts.
But O'Brien said he wrote that book, which could have been a lie.
The thing is, nobody in the book was actually in the Brotherhood. That's the thing. Everybody was pretending to be in the Brotherhood, or they were being persecuted by the party. But Winston was not in the Brotherhood. And the people that he thought were in the Brotherhood were all government agents. So I don't know. There's no actual person in the book that's in the Brotherhood.
Speaking of the Goldstein book. I don't know how you guys felt about this, but I felt like that there's like a whole section in the store in 1984. It's just basically it's a long section of just the book of the Goldstein book.
Yeah,
that's one of the most fascinating parts of 1984.
Yeah, and I was reading it, and as I'm reading, I'm thinking this doesn't feel like it's for opposition. It's for people who are maybe in the inner party of the Big Brother. I felt like it wasn't even written by Goldstein. You know what I mean? Even though I knew that what was going to happen, I just like when I was reading, I'm like, man, it doesn't feel like they're arguing against the party at all. They're just saying this is what happened and this is why we did this, and that's it.
Yeah.
You know.
And the arguments that it makes is, becoming more and more true to this day. There is a tremendous amount of waste of resources that goes on right now. We throw most of our tax dollars to war, and war is almost continuous. And that was one of the points that Goldstein's book made, was that they never wanted their population to thrive, basically. It was a practice in forced starvation and controlled starvation. That's what it was. And anything in access to it was just thrown away at massive death, basically. And that's what's going on right now. It's crazy. Anyway, the other point that was made was due to having this entire population with very little that they actually own, it makes every little piece of object, any possession, amplified in its value and in their standing in society. So it becomes very petty, basically. People are enthralled with just these things that really don't matter in life. They're not going after education, they're going after bling, okay? And that's, instead of throwing money into all this BS, war and stuff, the government very well could be feeding it into the educational system, and they choose not to do that. And people are in lifelong debt because they actually chose to go to school and, in hopes that they were going to be tremendously improved. And it's just not happening today. It's crazy.
Dole, you were talking about this book, the Goldstein's book, supposedly Goldstein's book. One of the big things that Winston keeps asking is, I know the how. I know how you guys are doing all this, but I don't know why.
Yeah.
Does that book kind of get into the whys?
I don't even think it does. We never find out. And even, I even think, maybe I'm remembering the book wrong, but I almost think that O'Brien says you never will find that out. No, I'm sorry. He's talking about
the Brotherhood. He tells Winston he'll never find out if the Brotherhood exists.
Exactly. But it's kind of the same thing, don't you think?
But he does say, I felt like it came across that the Big Brother party, INCSOC, was in power because they just wanted to be in power. And it was power for its own sake.
Right.
We are people that want to be in power, and that's the reason why this is all going on.
Mm-hmm.
There's no goal here except to maintain the power, which is what you're saying, Rick. Continue to perpetuate the war forever, so that the people in power can stay in power.
Yep.
Yeah. Power is God. God is power.
I would say that that's definitely, to a certain degree, something like that is happening. The people who control the government, the lobbyists and the big business,
yep,
they've been in power forever, and they will try to continue to be in power.
Another
passed down from generation to generation.
Those institutions.
The party slogan is "War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength." It's all geared towards perpetuating the status quo.
But it's also it's also about opposites, though. Just like the Ministry of Truth, the Ministry of Plenty, the Ministry of Love. It's really the Ministry of Hate, the Ministry of Hate, the Ministry of there is no plenty, and the Ministry of Poverty, and the Ministry of
war,
misinformation.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm. Well, they get into newspeak
of war. Yeah,
one of Winston's jobs is also to, I think, they're actually trying to degrade the language, take words out, and kind of like almost like dumb everything down. And of course, that makes me think of like text messaging now. OMG, and I think that Orwell felt this personally, that the language, like in his viewpoint at the time, was being eroded away, and that is yet another way that control can be asserted over people. If you don't have words to express yourself, it decreases like individuality and just more gets people going towards towing the line. Wilk, did you feel that was expressed in this, or we haven't heard from you in a while? I didn't know your thoughts on newspeak and the aspect of the book. I mean, in my book there was a whole appendix dedicated to newspeak that I just kind of skimmed over.
Mine too.
What about newspeak? What?
Are you big on newspeak? Is it important to you?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was an engaging interaction there.
I thought that was fascinating, though, how they were their level of control was to eliminate words and make it so
I've got
systematic.
a mixed opinion about that. Like, I think it's cool. Again, similar to the whole thought control. I think that the Newspeak thing was a cool tool to use in this book, but totally like way over the top. Never would happen. Like, yes, the language gets degraded, but people aren't rewriting a whole freaking English dictionary with the purpose of, eliminating words so that we can control your ability to protest and things like that.
Those dictionaries serve the exact opposite. And there's no editing like that right now.
But people do, in power, people do try to frame things and put out
They
slogans.
certainly do. They will, people in power, people in politics will use different language to describe stuff like, in order to convey a message like insurgents, things like that, using the word insurgent instead of, I don't know, terrorist.
Right. I mean, I see
like
that even in my everyday life, just people just interacting with other people trying to do business will frame things certain ways in like maybe just to sell a product. They'll say one thing over another to kind of push control onto the other person with their words.
I think the best recent example would be just a gentleman who walked into one of the Planned Parenthoods and just shot the entire place up. That was an act of terrorism, but he's not considered a terrorist. Why not? He terrorized an entire building of business and people, actually getting a service, but he was never called a terrorist.
I think a lot of people called him a terrorist.
Well,
in the same way that you did.
A lot of people did, but
like him a terrorist.
Half the country did, but like in the news, the way it was reported, he was not a terrorist in the official AP
He's not really a terrorist in the sense that he's not from a foreign country. He's just some nut job here shooting up some other people again. I mean,
but he's causing terrorism. He's causing terrorism.
That's an example of domestic terrorism.
Yeah.
But you guys are getting exactly into what the whole essence of what we're talking about is, that they framed it in a certain language. The same way, like when Russia annexed Crimea, they annexed them. They didn't start a war. They annexed them.
Or someone is assassinated versus murdered.
Exactly. So I mean, it changes the perspective of what you talk about. Like you just did it yourself. Like you said, well, it wasn't a terrorist. Well, what defines a terrorist? They just have to be from a foreign country?
Yeah, it's usually somebody that has an agenda that they want to like hurt other people to further their own agenda by making people not do something. So I think under that definition, he could be a terrorist, but until we know what he is, it's just some guy shooting up people, which unfortunately happens all the time.
Well, he was a terrorist.
I agree.
He was a terrorist because he was muttering that he was like he was parroting something that was going on in some Republican propaganda. So he was radicalized by Republican propaganda.
I don't think Republicans say to kill pro-life people. I mean, I think he's just some...
No, they don't say that. But
well, let's not get too caught up in the incident. I think the point
there was a lot of,
is
like,
the control. We're talking about the way that the media or corporations or even individuals or governments, everyone tries to control language to convey a message.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the big things in this book. And I mean, I don't know that there's anything else to say about this book. Do you guys have any other points that you want to bring up that we haven't already discussed?
I had a couple of things that I had written down in my, just from as I was reading through here, that I thought it would be interesting to bring up.
Yeah, go ahead, take your time now. And while we're waiting for John to do that,
riff on that,
Wilk, what if you were a ministry? Which ministry would you have been in this book?
Love.
Ministry of Love? Okay. And there any reason why? Because I think the Ministry of Love that's where Room 101 was, where all the torturing took place. Is that why?
I'd be a good torturer.
Yeah, you certainly would. Rick, what about you?
I'd probably the
Ministry
of Truth. Ministry of Truth.
Ministry of Truth?
Yeah.
And why do you feel that way?
It's just, my personal opinion, that's all. That's where I would see myself. I can't see myself hurting people. I don't know.
Yeah, Rick, you're definitely a paladin.
Yeah.
Dole, that leaves you with Ministry of Peace or Ministry of
No,
Plenty.
I think I would want to be wherever they did the pornographic novelettes that.
Ministry of Truth, baby.
Yeah, that's what I want, that specific job.
Yeah. But only the women were allowed to work in it.
Then I would pose as a woman, I guess.
You'd be their manager.
I'd be their manager.
Why does a man have to be in charge?
Because that's how it was in 1984. The managers were the men.
I was just looking at some of the things here that I wrote down that I thought were interesting little tidbits in the book. Like the fact that he keeps bringing up that razor blades are scarce. And then the fact that O'Brien says, occasionally we're able to slip you a razor blade. if you're,
Oh,
I thought that was an interesting thing. Like,
if you get captured, we'll slip you a razor blade, implying that they can't break you out of prison, but they'll give you some means to end your.
But
own
also,
life.
like thinking on that, to expand on that, I also kind of found it interesting that there's really very little discussion of guns or weaponry. Nobody really has a weapon in this. The only discussion of it is in the wars that we never see, and in the bullet that's supposed to be shot. That Winston's going to be shot, or whoever is a party defector is going to be shot. But there's never any physical gun. We never see any weapon, So I thought that was interesting. The razor blades are scarce. We don't really see any guns per se. So
isn't there truncheons? Isn't everyone getting blasted with truncheons?
Yeah, what's a truncheon?
It's talked about, but you never see it.
It's a club, right?
Yeah, but you never really.
I thought
Is that what that is?
I thought.
Oh, you mean when they're taken away from the house?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess the way I saw that is that it was it all led back to the fact that, if you wanted to die easily and escape this world, you couldn't die. You couldn't even kill yourself. Even that freedom was taken away from you because they didn't want you to die unclean.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was really kind of a hidden factor in the book. I liked that fact. Well, I didn't like it, but I was like, I liked the fact that he hid that in there.
It was interesting, yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, it was.
A truncheon is a baton, by the way.
Yeah.
All right.
There were some things about Julia that were interesting to me. Like,
we already kind of talked about her. I don't know if you have something else to say about her.
Well, I mean, she was didn't they meet eyes after they were in the light in the Ministry of Love, and they basically intentionally sort of ignored each other after glancing and meeting eyes for an instant. I mean, they almost feared and hated each other when they saw each other after all of that.
Yeah, I think so. Guys, I'm going to cut it here because we're already an hour in. And we have to get into the movies.
Oh,
so
yeah.
unless there's something really important you want to talk about, I think we got to move on.
All right, yeah. Let's go.
Okay. All right, so the first movie we'll talk about, and I think we'll probably mostly talk about, is the film 1984, which was directed by Michael Radford, and it actually came out in 1984. Wilk, what can you tell us about this director, Michael Radford?
He hasn't done a whole lot of things that I was impressed with. He made this foreign Italian film called El Tustino, which was a big hit, but just his body of work, including this film, I thought were very underwhelming. And he's done well for himself. I mean, this won Best Film in Britain in 1984 when it came out. It received no awards of that caliber over anywhere else. The British do love their own, and no, I have the film itself. I just didn't think needed to be made. I didn't like it, and I wish I hadn't watched it.
Well, that's a lot of opinions again from you, but I thought it was interesting that they filmed this in 1984, and they even filmed some of the scenes on the exact dates that they're referenced in the book.
Yeah,
which was kind of interesting, and in some of the exact locations that were referenced in the book.
It would be better if you made actually a good movie as opposed to doing little things like provide trivia for you. Yeah. Okay, I could give a fuck about what dates they filmed this goddamn movie on. It sucked. It was boring. It lacked art and merit, and it took good actors and put them through the mill. I mean, it was a shitty movie. It didn't need to be made. The British are just fucking terrible, and they love themselves so much. It's like they fart in a car, and they just want to smell that fart. The movie is forgettable. It's not worth watching, and in any other country in the world, he'd be working digging ditches, but in Britain, he can make movies. His movies are god-awful, like almost every other British director we've made. They can't make it. It's just... the British should just stick with writing stuff and let Americans make the movies.
What did you not like about the movie? You're being very vague.
I didn't like the cinematography. I didn't like the acting. I didn't like the set pieces.
When you say you didn't like the cinematography, what did you not like about it?
I have to agree with him. I think the cinematography...
Ryan,
the cinematography was pretty bad.
Open a dictionary.
What do you mean?
And look up what cinematography means. That's what I didn't like. God damn it. That's what I didn't like about it.
So you didn't like the shots. You didn't like the shots.
I have to agree with him that the camera angles used, the lenses, I don't know every aspect of it, but different depth of field, things like that. It was not really shot very well.
They grow up watching the BBC.
But I read in there that he used a special technique to kind of to bleach out the coloration of the film, and I really thought that helped make the story bleak.
What the fuck does reading matter? Did you see it? Did you like it? Who the fuck cares what you read? It's a goddamn movie.
Well,
So what I'm
you
saying is,
brought
I
up the
felt the tone.
cinematography, so.
I felt like the tone. The visual
did you
tone
read
of the
that
film
too?
was just
what
like
did
the
you
book.
see? What did you
Was
feel?
just like the book. The greatness.
Quit being a
of it,
robot.
which is
What did you
when
feel?
read
I'd like
this
to
book-
interject. I disagree with Wilk. I don't think the movie was terrible.
It's fine.
I thought it was fairly well done. We'll get into the next movie, but I thought that the next movie was better. But I thought that is it John Hurt is the lead role?
John Hurt.
Yeah, I thought he did a really nice job, and I thought that the guy who played O'Brien was really effective. They really
Richard Burton. His last
nailed
role.
the performances down. I mean, it felt
they're
legitimate
good
to
actors. Yeah, they're good actors. I agree. I just hated the movie.
But I do have to agree. I think that the way it was shot was poor. Interesting tidbit that I read was that this was shot the same year that Brazil, the movie by Terry Gilliam, was shot, and at some of the exact same locations. And in Brazil is very much a dystopian film as well, and it kind of takes a little bit of it tips its hat to 1984 quite a bit if you haven't seen it.
It does. It's Terry Gilliam's an amazing director. He's great. I love all his movies. He did The Fisher King. He did Brazil. What are his other big ones, Dole? He did some other amazing movies.
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
That's a good one.
Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
12 Monkeys.
12 Monkeys.
hit, but-
Love 12 Monkeys.
Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
Time Bandits, which you guys hate.
No, I don't
No,
hate
Time
that.
Bandits was good.
I like Time Bandits. Well, I think Rick doesn't like it, right?
Rick doesn't like it.
I liked it when I
But
was a
speaking
kid.
of British, he's British.
No, Terry Gilliam.
Yeah, he's the
not
exception.
British.
He's not?
That Brits.
No, he's the American. He's the only American in the Monty Python.
Oh,
Wow.
right.
Boom.
I didn't
Double
know that.
think. Start double thinking.
Look at me. Anyways, but I was just brought it up because I thought it was interesting that it was filmed at the same exact time, and they used exact same locations to the point where Gilliam was afraid that his movie was going to fail because 1984 was like going to come out and be like the exact same film as his.
And Brazil did fail, I think.
It did, but it's definitely a cult classic. People love it now, but it did not do well at the box office. I didn't realize he was American. And okay, well, good. It proves my point earlier.
He's the one who did.
British,
he's the one who did all the animations for the Monty Python.
yeah, the good parts. Yeah, the British can't make movies, so they shouldn't.
I've said this all along.
And
Welcome to the dark side.
Michael
Bill.
Radford actually is the one who wrote the screenplay.
James
for this.
Bond.
So
I disagree still with the British comment.
yeah, I like. this film.
my
I
favorite
like.
films are
I
Hammer
like
films.
most.
I beat over the top.
I-
I beat over the top. So just yeah.
I
What
like-
about Hammer films? Anyway.
I like most of the British stuff that we've done. Actually, I've loved. I think all the British stuff we've covered.
Yeah, you've loved it.
Shakespeare in Love.
Oh my god,
It's a good movie.
No, the problem I have with the British is the whole BBC thing. I hate the BBC, the way that they film things. It's just this cheap,
I
boring
like a lot of
production
BBC
value.
stuff too.
I like TV, but I'm just saying I like films when they actually present them as a film, as something special. The British make everything like TV, and it's a broad statement. But I think the BBC is a bad influence on British filmmakers.
I've been saying that all along.
Yeah, I think
I completely
agree.
disagree. I think the BBC does great work.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff. In
Well,
there that
what
they
do you
well.
disagree with specifically? What I'm saying, I'm talking about like
Well,
cinematography
everything
and the way
that
they
you said
film
is
making.
pretty much I disagree with. Pretty much everything that's coming out of your mouth in the last 5 minutes.
I'm not saying
I probably
the
think
BBC
opposite.
does great work. I'm saying I don't like the style that it's shot in compared to American films. I mean, the American TV and BBC are very similar, but a movie is supposed to tell a concise
You
story
guys,
in 2 hours.
You realize Ron Howard will be tackling 1984.
Oh God,
What? I didn't know about that.
Ron Howard needs a hit. He hasn't had a good movie in like 10 years,
His last movie was about a race car
and
driver.
it bombed. And
If
I
he
think-
wants a hit, I don't think he should tackle 1984. Personally, I think it's a bad film.
I don't think so
No,
either.
Dole,
I
you
think
just-
it's a bad film. It just shows poorly.
Dole, I think didn't you send me a link that there is going to be a new version of
There,
1984 coming
yeah,
out?
there's. Well, I don't know if it may have been shelved, but I read at the time. I read that the guy Paul Greengrass, he did the Bourne series, and Captain Phillips. He was supposed to be doing 1984, but he may have shelved it. Maybe he saw there is a difficult film to put together.
Okay, now whoever does 1984 has got to be part of sort of like the inner party, quote unquote. You know, in our times, that's who has to direct and produce 1984 if they were to do it in the next couple of years.
I feel this way about if you're going to film 1984. I almost feel like the way Jodorowsky does a film is how 1984 should be filmed. It should be like completely the filmmaker's creation. Like take the book
Right.
and just
Toss
as
it out.
as,
Throw it out
as
the window.
Jodorowsky
Yes.
would say, fuck the movie. I mean,
Yeah,
he
right.
should basically take the movie and just completely change it. And take the book and completely change
Dole,
it
did you see
so that it suits.
Did you see V is for Vendetta, which is kind of a variation on 1984 based on the graphic novel?
Yeah, it's a great film, man.
Well shot movie.
Yeah,
well made
definitely.
movie. Definitely very entertaining to watch. And I don't know. I just felt like this movie was just kind of a hacky BBC thing.
Well, I think each version.
And there actually is a BBC version, a television version.
Yeah, there is.
We didn't watch it because this wasn't BBC.
No, this was a film. No. Yeah.
Well, then let's get. There was there was a BBC version that I don't think any of us watched, but there was also a version released in, was it 1954 or 1956?
56, yeah.
That was directed by Michael Anderson and starred Edward O'Brien. Did any of you guys watch that? It was in black and white.
No,
I did.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
you saw it, Rick?
I did. Yeah.
Wilk, did you see
No.
it? Okay, so you didn't see it, but Dole, you saw it. You were going to tell us a little bit about background on that film.
Yeah. I tried to do a little bit of research. There's not much, like Wilk says. I have to agree with him. It's hard to find some info on some of these directors. But one thing about this, Michael Anderson, he ended up directing later on. He directed Logan's Run, which is also a dystopian sci-fi film. And that film got like a special Academy Award. And in that film, there's this carousel that when you reach the age of 30, you have to surrender to this carousel. And the carousel brings you all the way to the top of the ceiling. And if you reach the top of the ceiling and grab this ring, you can go through another 30 years of life. But if you don't, then you're killed. And nobody ever reaches the top of the ring. And that's the gist of this dystopian society, is that you only live to your 30. You have a great life. You get all like the perks and stuff. But, so anyway, but I thought it was interesting that he did that film, another dystopian film, and his son stars in that film too.
He did a bunch of other sci-fi films, too. I saw that he did The Martian Chronicles. We did that for TV. He did The Martian Chronicles, which was written by Ray Bradbury, who we covered in Something Wicked This Way Comes, which was the last episode that you were on.
And that also had a carousel in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he also did two Jules Verne's work, two works by Jules Verne. He did Around the World in 80 Days, which I think he had a lot of success with. And then he did a TV version of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea that was released in the exact same year as in 1997 as that the Roadshow version that we saw, which I guess we didn't know about this other version that was put out by Hallmark. So he's done a bunch of, and I think he's done other sci-fi stuff as well.
Yeah. I also looked at some of the stars in the film. Ed O'Brien, I know he won an Oscar for some movie I've never heard of, Barefoot Contessa. It's a black and white film from 1954. But that film, he got that Oscar just before doing 1984. So, he was coming off of a big award. Other than that, there was Donald Pleasance, who's most notable to be in the Halloween series as Dr. Loomis. Mm. He was the guy who went after Michael Myers. So he stars as Parsons. And then Jan Sterling was Julia, and she had also just received her Oscar for a movie, The High and Mighty, where she was Best Supporting Actress. So you got two pretty solid Oscar-winning actors in this film. So that's why I think this film was a better version. It's not the torture scenes aren't as believable, because I think it was back in the 50s, they couldn't film some of the stuff that they did in the 80s. But I felt like the end of the film really was more dramatic. And some of these old black and white films, they just have more drama. Like they're like, some of it's over the top drama, but I kind of like that. And I really like the fact that at the very end, like he's like crying, like, I love you, Big Brother. And you really feel like he's got this emotion for Big Brother, and he's totally given up his love for Julia. I thought that was pretty cool.
Stronger than the John Hurt version.
Definitely.
The ending.
Definitely, man.
I thought that the eye effect was pretty cool. It had this like moving, almost blinking, like electronic eye that represented Big Brother. That was really creepy.
Yeah, that was kind of cool.
Another thing that I noticed was that they weakened the role of Julia, and they made her kind of like more of like I'm just going to support you, Winston.
I agree. But I think that goes with the times too. The 50s, was different times.
That was too bad. But so I thought that was weaker. But Rick, did you have any thoughts about the black and white version? Did you prefer that one, or did you feel they were both good? Or
I felt that they both kind of gave us slightly different perspectives on the same story, and they both followed it pretty closely. I didn't have a problem with either of them, but it's more like a thinking man's sort of movie. There's really no, I mean, they're in a war, but it just, and it doesn't really play out in detail in any of the book, but it's not really a book that should be a movie. It's more like Dole said, the book should be thrown out the window if another movie were made, and they should just completely go on sort of like train of thought, just completely wipe it out with something that everyone can all understand. That would be really cool. A movie that sort of speaks to the prolies and gets everybody sort of riled up.
Yeah, it's just hard to make a film on this when half of the book, more than half the book, is in his head. So how do you make a film that's in the person's head?
There's like
none of that
30
can be
pages
translated.
dedicated to another book. Yeah.
It's just not. It doesn't translate well. It's a bad.
No, not really.
And this is on one hand, what I agree with Wilk is that, why even make the film, because it doesn't work. At the end of the day, neither of these films would I want to watch them again. To be honest, they did a good job, but neither one was great.
I felt the book was a tough read. I mean, it's engaging, but its tone is so bleak. I mean, after I was done with it, I was like, wow, this book has struck me all over again, and I'm glad I read it. But when I was slogging through it, and especially when in the middle, I guess Rick, you really liked the Goldstein's book, but I was slogging through it, and I was just
I like the entire book, though.
It really kind of makes you like, wow, it's just like you look around, you just like, everything is crap.
Yeah, it's very depressing.
It gets into your thoughts.
There's a lot of hope in this book, though, that it kind of speaks to, people are willing to sort of go through torture, almost like a political suicide, and speaking their mind just for the reason to get caught and to then report to a journalist. There's hope, and there's people like this everywhere. And I think everyone has sort of like this latent ability to do something like that, to speak truth to power and, spread the good word and, that kind of thing. We can all live in peace and harmony. All we got to do is just, get rid of our current government, and try and work from within or something. But I think it's a promising book because people are willing to go through hell and high water to communicate.
Let's
and be touched by one another.
Let's leave that movie behind there, because I think we also want to touch in before we go here that myself and Rick and Dole all went and saw a live play version of 1984 that was held at the Steppenwolf here in Chicago. It was part of their young adults program, and it was directed by, what's her name, Haley Gordon. We saw that, it just happened to coincide with this podcast. Dole, what were your thoughts on that play? So now you've seen, that'll be like the third version of this plus the book. Obviously, that was a different medium. It was a pretty sparse set, but they had a lot of multimedia stuff going on with projections and stuff on the walls, part of the scenery, and obviously they incorporated like screens and stuff into it, and then there's a lot of production done with there. What was your
I got to be honest, I really disliked it, and a couple of reasons why. I love live theater, and one of the things with live theater is people have got to act even more so than in the film. Because in films you can do multiple takes to really nail emotion, but in the theater it's live. You got to improv. You got to kind of bring it. And how do you bring it with something that's so bland and has like no emotion? There's really no emotion in this book, almost none. So, and that really came across. I felt like on the stage, it was like there was like I had no sympathy for any character. That was just how I felt about it. I think the set design was cool. Yeah, they did some nice stuff, like when they ride a subway train and everybody's looking at their cell phones, and they're just kind of like doing this, mimicking riding the subway. They did some cool stuff in terms of that to like make you feel like the scene was real. But I felt like it must have been torture for these actors for performance. Like how do you perform? It's just nothing to do. That's just how I felt about it. Yeah. And it wasn't their fault. I think they did a great job for what they did, but I just feel like the same way we're talking about the film, it's very difficult to translate this, even worse so on the live stage, I feel.
Yeah. I agree with
I
that.
enjoyed it. I saw this before I finished the book or watched the other two movies. For what it was, I enjoyed it, and I was pretty impressed with the way they were able to incorporate the multimedia stuff. But I mean, you make a good point that the material is tough to have. It's just tough material. The bleakness of it is throughout. But I did enjoy it for what it was. I felt like, I was glad I saw it, and afterwards I had some interesting discussion with the crowd just about the relevance of that book to now. Rick, go ahead. What your thoughts on it?
It takes a hell of a lot of acting to make this work, and like I haven't really seen it. Like, okay, they gave an Oscar to the actors back in 1956, that prior to them making this movie, and they should have been like on it. I thought they did a pretty decent job. It still didn't translate very well. It's very difficult to make this translate well to a movie. And, ditto for what Dole said about the play too. I mean, the actors really just couldn't bring it. They needed to bring a hell of a lot more to make it really work, to make it worthy of great criticism. It just didn't. It kind of fell flat. And the acting troupe was a bit young. I think maybe they're giving some of the more experienced actors maybe some holiday off or something. Who knows? But
no, Rick, this was part of the young adults program.
Yeah.
So it was specifically this was.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
For young adults to I think that was part of it.
Everybody who stayed back though for the discussion, they just seemed like they were all over 40 years old. There were some pretty intelligent speakers, but it was
I mean, that's the crowd, but I think the actors might have been all younger actors on purpose.
Yeah, I think they had some kind of relationship with some Chicago public high schools or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, they had a real agile stage, and they switched from scene to scene almost seamlessly, and it was polished production wise. The acting, that's tough though. It's just tough. The book is inherently sort of bland, and it's just all about this guy's struggle to get out of that rhythm and to find some humanity, and that's tough to act like you're that oppressed. It's a lot of facial expression, and it's just
Totally.
Yeah.
Were they mic'd?
Totally.
Were they mic'd on stage?
Yeah, I think they were mic'd. They had audio system and everything there. I don't think that was the problem. They had all the visual effects, all that stuff. But like Rick's saying, man, it's hard to bring it when this material is it's like flat, man. I mean, there's certainly tension, but the characters themselves are kind of empty. I mean, in terms of their emotion,
The material, the source material.
Exactly.
They're being washed of it.
The source material. Now, I was looking in their program that they actually, I think, had done Animal Farm maybe last year and had a lot of success, and I think that's what led them to do 1984. But as we said earlier, Animal Farm has a different tone. Sure.
Yeah, I think, again, if I were the director of the live theater troupe, and I'm by no means any expert, in the same way that I talked about the film, I would have taken the book and been like, let's do something fresh and different. Let's take the medium of theater and let's exploit the medium of theater, take Orwell's general ideas, but let's really use the medium of theater and do something with this. Instead of like
with
trying
the
to do
Orwellian ideology as the backdrop. Yeah, with his ideology intact.
Exactly. Instead of just doing a like note by note, we got to do it exactly as it is in the book.
Yeah.
I just don't think it works for this book. Simple as that. And I would tell anybody, don't see the film or the play. That's my feeling. Unless you really want to get a sense of what it came out to be, but I don't recommend any of them. That's just me.
That was a good talk about the play, guys. And, I think I'm going to give my rating now for the book and the movie.
All right, let's do our final star ratings. I'll start it off. I'm giving this book 5 stars. And I'll give, I like the John Hurt movie. I think I'd give that 4 stars. And the black and white one, 4 stars, for the 2 movies that we officially covered. Rick, what about you? The books, the movies, star ratings out of 5?
The book is a must read for everybody. 5 stars. The movies, I'd say 3.5.
For both of them?
Yeah, both of them.
Okay. Dole, what about you for the book and the 2 movies?
Book, definitely 5 stars. And as far as the movies, I'd say the John Hurt film, the 1984 version of 1984, I would give that one, say, 3 stars, and then say the 1956 version, probably 3.5.
The movie, really, as I said earlier, I just didn't think it needed to be made, and I didn't really enjoy it. I didn't find it particularly well made, and not needing to be made. I would give it 1.5 stars. I don't think anyone needs to watch this movie. I mean, if you're on an airplane, I guess, and I don't know, you can't sleep, watch it. But the book itself, it's about as good as a book can be. I would give it 4.5 stars, maybe 4 3/4. It's just a great work of fiction. It's well written, and it's the kind of thing that everybody should read. But it's very dark, and it's very depressing, and again, it doesn't really translate well into a film, although elements of it have been incorporated. So
that's going to be it. We'll ask everyone. Well, Dole, do you want to go ahead and plug your website for your
sure.
band? I know. Now, let me just set this up. This recording is being released after you just did a show, like a week ago, where you are playing these galaxies that you were just talking about earlier live, and you're having a lot of psychedelic visuals on stage for that. Are you going to be releasing video footage of the show, and will the footage also include some of the visuals that you personally designed for the show?
Yeah, I certainly hope so. We will have shot the show at Reggie's. We're hoping that the footage comes out good and the audio is good. That doesn't always happen. It's kind of a gamble, hit or miss. Sometimes we come out with some golden stuff, but we hope to have something good. This is our first time doing it live, so we'll see. But you can certainly check out our website at www.i-decline.com. And most of our video stuff is up there. We also have a YouTube channel. It's all linkable through our website, www.i-decline.com. And we'll be releasing a record in the future sometime soon.
And your music, for people that don't know, it's hard rock metal.
Yeah.
Not to label.
Yeah, we're kind of in the hard rock,
in essence,
metal genre. We're not as heavy as Slayer, not as light as, say, Pearl Jam. We're kind of in the middle there. Something like Sabbath-y, in that vein, kind of stoner rockish. So if you like that stuff, you'll probably dig us.
So we'd like to thank John for providing and performing that song we mentioned earlier, War is Peace. And additionally, we'd like to thank Vickie Dillon over at Heath Literary Agency for working with John to secure the use of Orwell's text in that song and allowing us to incorporate it into this podcast. So we'll go ahead and give credit, of course, the music and melody of that song in the sound recording is copyright John Doyle, and the text, the lyrics are from 1984 by George Orwell, copyright George Orwell 1984, reproduced by permission of Bill Hamilton as the literary executor of the estate of the late Sonia Brownell Orwell. So thanks again, everyone involved with that. Okay. So if everyone could join us next month, we'll be covering our final work for this season. We're going to be reading The Preserving Machine and Other Stories by Philip K. Dick, which also includes a story, we'll remember it for you, Wholesale, which was turned into a movie called Total Recall, directed by Paul Verhoeven, who did
great film,
Starship Troopers, and starred Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Arnold Schwarzenegger was in The Running Man, which we also covered. And there was also a remake of this, Total Recall, directed by Len Wiseman, which starred Colin Farrell. So we'll cover those next month. And other than that, I will invite anyone to go and visit our website, www.nodeodorant.com. You can also rate our Crappy Podcast on iTunes. You can also subscribe on iTunes. Find us on TuneIn Radio. We also have our own YouTube channel. We have all our shows up on there if that's your preference to listen to our show. There's lots of places to catch us on the web if you're looking to check us out. And with that, I'll have everyone say it a very enthusiastic
good night.
Good night. Goodbye, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Goodbye.
Thank you, and remember, there's no deodorant in outer space.
For more information on the topics discussed in this episode, or to read our show notes and find us on social media, visit nodeodorant.com. For more information on Ryan Sean O'Reilly and his various works of fiction, visit ryanseano'reilly.com. For more information on David Wilkinson, visit drycracker.com. For more information on Richard Mell, check out his profile at goodreads.com. The theme music for this podcast was written by John Doyle from the band I Decline. You can visit him at i-decline.com. Voiceover for this podcast was provided by me, Margaret O'Reilly. Well, that concludes our episode. We hope you've learned a lot. Again, thanks for listening to our show. And always, always remember, there is no deodorant in outer space.
Yeah, good. Oh my god. Oh, you fucked up.
Okay, ready? In 5.
We're going from 5.
In 4.
Let's go from 3.
In 3. Wait.
Oh, shit. See, you started at 5. You fucked it all up.
Fuck.
I think he's pooping.
What's the problem?
He's pooping.
New computer.
It's a poopcast. Deified this book and this author in a way that's not... What? Yes, Ryan.
We can't
Ryan,
hear you.
Ryan,
We can't hear you.
Ryan, what? You can't hear me?
Now we can. When you go to the side like that, I don't know what is happening.
I think you're pulling your mic away from your face.
Okay. Yeah, that's what you're doing.
No, I mean...
don't put your hand on your mic.
He's been deified...
It drove him into writing from that point.
What happened with his throat, though, Rick?
That was when he went to the Spanish War. If you want to expand on that,
that's
Spanish
way more
Revolution,
interesting.
Civil
That's
War.
like the most interesting thing said so far. So, what happened to his throat? He got
Well,
shot.
thank you for.
He got shot in the throat. Why are we
Ryan,
skipping over getting shot in the throat? That's like, what happened with that?
Wilk, I don't skip over shit.
You cut
I just
him
try to
off.
take it one at a time. Okay, you fucking spaz.
I am not the one.
Hey,
I'm
Ryan.
the one spazzing.
Ryan and everybody else, watch your mic there,
Wilk,
Wilk.
you're fucking your microphone.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, did you...
Push it closer.
I want to echo.
Push it in front of your. Yeah, there you go.
Speaking of the...
Wilk, your fucking
It
mic.
country did, but like...
Wilk, what can you tell us about this director, Michael Radford?
I don't really like him. He
Anything besides personal opinion, or I think you're kind of incapable of telling yourself without giving an opinion. But Rick's not interested. Go ahead. Locations that were
it would have been
referenced
better
in
if
the
he
book.
actually made a good movie, though, instead of doing that.
If we could hear what you're
it
saying,
would be better
I
if he
think we
made
might
actually
have an opinion
a
on
good
it.
movie as opposed to doing little things like provide trivia for you.
Again, I don't know if you don't want to hear us.
You know, I'm going to go to bed. Are we almost done here? Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Yeah.
It's when you go to the side. We can't hear you.
Okay.
Not to be, but I don't recommend any of them. That's just me.
Wilk's trying to call in, guys.
No, that's me trying to call Wilk.
Oh.
He, I guess, had enough.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I'm really sorry about that.
He said it's too late. He has to sleep.
I can imitate his
So-
voice for you guys if you want.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So
first
if
you
you
gotta,
want
like,
to do
stick
the
your head in
ratings
the
now,
bucket.
I'll do that.
Let's all do Wilk's imitation of Wilk. Oh, it sucked. I hate on it.
Oh, man.
Insert title of work here.
Here's my Wilk, right? So what are we doing?
Okay.
We're doing star rating and
No, first do your Wilk imitation.
oh, okay. Yeah, well, hold on. Let me push my ear thing out of the way in my mic. Can you guys hear me now? What the fuck, man? All right, Ryan. Yeah, all right, Ryan. You're always wrong, and I hate the book, and the movie was okay, but I wouldn't tell anybody to watch it. Yeah, don't bother even getting up in the morning. Just forget it.
I got an idea.
Rick, do you,
For Halloween, I should probably be wearing my Sinbads because I dig them. They're just cool. Everybody should be wearing Sinbads. If you don't like Sinbads, you can go to hell.
okay.